name is Darryl Robert Shune, and once again I have the extraordinary pleasure of introducing the audience to Reverend Betty Tatalajski, the founder of the Temple of Universality, here in Tucson, Arizona. And truly, the temple is a very, very different place, and it's because of what has happened to this lady. 25 years ago, she had a Course in Miracles class. She took him back to Camp Chesterfield. She walked into a spiritualist church. It changed her life. And it changed it in such a way that really she's driven by the desire that others may find the truth and the faith that she has found in this world that has been known as spiritualism. Reverend Betty Tatalajski.
Thank you very much, Darryl. Hello, friends. You know how I love to be with you, both at the temple and here in the show. And I am so enthused right now at the show that we're going to do, and I'm so happy that this wonderful man is sitting here and he's going to talk about it. But I got to tell you how it happened, okay? You know, my favorite topic is to explain to people there is no death, because the fear of death is very much with us. Well, stop worrying, because you'll never die. You'll leave your body, but anyway, we had one of the most incredible experiences 2 days after the wonderful, fantastic Robin Williams made transition into the spirit world. We, like millions of people around the world, were saddened to see him go. But we were certainly gladdened 2 nights later when he came into our, what do you call it? Spirit circle. Now, these circles where we talk to those in spirit world through the mediumship of my beautiful minister, Reverend Christine Fassetti, one of the best. Every other Friday night, generally, we have opportunity to talk to anyone who has ever lived. The main purpose of her 20 years of study, prayer, and meditation in order to do this, this spiritual phenomenon, is to introduce people to the teachers that they came in with. Nobody comes into life alone. It is not possible. And so each person has a band of teachers who are most willing to tell you, to remind you why you're here and help you to accomplish what it is. So anyway, 2 nights after Robin Williams made transition into the spirit world, and the world was, lessened our lives. A light went out around the world because of this incredible man. We knew, of course, he didn't die, but we had the most wonderful surprise 2 Friday nights ago, I guess it was, but it was 2 days after he made transition. And at the circle, I sit beside Chris, okay, in the first place here. And she is in trance, and her teacher says, "Betty, do you have a question?" "No, I don't." "I'd like to talk to anybody that would like to talk to me." It's wonderful. We've been doing it for years. She says, "Okay, we have a special person here tonight." Without saying a word, the next voice is Robin Williams, resonating through the room. We've never had anything that sounded this fantastic.
Good morning, Vietnam.
Good morning, Vietnam. Incredible. All things are possible. Now, what an honor, what a humbling experience for us to have this great soul who has delighted us for years, delighted the world, okay? When he made transition, the world mostly went into shock. We went into shock that he would come in and talk to us. But what I call that night was Woodstock. Woodstock. It was interesting because we were celebrating Woodstock at the same time. What was it, 50 years or something like that? That was the weekend anniversary of Woodstock.
I think it was the 45th anniversary.
Yes, 45th.
45th.
And he came in.
That day.
And I want my dear friend Darryl over here to explain about it and to introduce some of the many people who shared their Woodstock experience in the room with us.
I was in that room with Betty, in that Trance Circle. And I sort of grew up in San Francisco, the 1960s. I ran the food concessions at the Avalon Ballroom. I was there the night that Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company played their last gig together. All right? I was there in the 60s in San Francisco. And many amazing things have happened to me in that Bay Area during that era. And I tell my friends in the Bay Area that Tucson has had just an incredible effect on me, as did San Francisco. And they have no context in which to understand it. Just like people who weren't in San Francisco and really didn't know what went on have no understanding of what happened in San Francisco in the 60s. But I was there in the 60s. I lived on Haight Street, dropped out of law school. Those people, they were there. They were figures in my life during that time. And I played at the Avalon Ball. I worked at the Avalon Ballroom where most of them would show up and play on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. Well, here I am in Tucson, 45 years later, at a Trance Circle with Reverend Betty Tatalajski, who had been going to these things for the past 30 years. All right? First back in Camp Chesterfield, Indiana, and then Reverend Christine Fassetti started holding them here in Tucson. She became a trance medium herself. Now let me explain something about trances. A lot of you may know about Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, what happened in the 60s. But the context is this. We're in a darkened room, all right? There's around 12 of us. We do whatever. And there's a certain ritual to this. A year ago, Martha and I and a friend of ours, a retired police inspector, who I've known for 40, 50 years in San Francisco, and another minister from the temple, Reverend Yazdi Contractor, were in Peru, in Cusco. And through a certain series of circumstances, we ended up on a Saturday morning, at a Trance Circle in Cusco, Peru, in the hills. And let me assure you, this was not on the Cusco City tour. We happened to be there, and what was stunning about it, before we went into the room, they asked us to take out our cell phones and put them aside, which is exactly what we do here in Tucson, Arizona. All cell phones out of the room. We go in a darkened room. These people, I only knew one person there. He was a lawyer. And certain circumstances had caused him to say something, caused us to say something, and we knew we were on the same wavelength. And we had gone to Machu Picchu. He invited us later to attend this Trance Circle that we were at that morning. And so it was in Spanish and Quechua. All right, there's around maybe 25 people in that room. There's 15 of us here in Tucson. It started out saying the Lord's Prayer in Spanish. I recognized it. Same litany, just like we do in Tucson. And then they started singing songs, just like we do in Tucson. But if you haven't been to a Trance Circle, you know that the songs are there because to get the energy up. And so the energy going on, they're singing songs in Spanish. We're sitting in the dark, just like in Tucson, and all of a sudden we heard boom, doors opening, wings flying. It sounded like birds going. This is phenomena. This is what they call clairaudience. You are hearing phenomena. And then the medium, just like Christine Fassetti does here in Tucson, the medium there I heard later he was 27 years old and he'd been doing this since the age of 12 in Cusco. He starts speaking and they're coming through him. The spirit of the mountains, the spirit's there, and they knew we were there. They knew. That's why they had this Trance Circle at 5 in the morning. Because Alexis was leaving on the plane at 10 a.m., we were leaving at 6, and every Trance Circle they had been at noon. But 2 weeks before, 1 week before we got there, they were told the next Trance Circle was going to be at 5 a.m. And so we were. So I'm used to this now because of her. All right? Well, there's somebody else, but it's because of the Temple of Universality. I mean, I'm used to it.
That there are no coincidences.
That there are no coincidences. So I'm in that room with Betty last month on the anniversary of Woodstock. I'm sitting there. She's the first person. There's around 15 people in the room. She's the first person. She always is. This is what she gets for being there at these times. And they ask her, is there anybody you want to talk to? Betty says, no. Anybody who wants to come can talk to me. All right? And all of a sudden, we hear this booming voice, "Good morning, Vietnam!" And we're shocked.
2 days after
he died. And it's Robin Williams. And he's on a roll. He is on a roll like he would do, whether it was Johnny Carson, whether it was anybody, stand-up comedian. He is on a roll and he's talking.
He just reverberates through the room.
Yes, and he's talking, and he said, what we found out was this. Even though to me he just showed up, we found out that Betty, in her meditation, had asked if he could come in this week. All right? So there had been a request, so he does show up, and he's talking. But what he said was this, and I think this is why Betty wanted me to tell about this. Because the people he brought, he said, there are many of us here tonight.
And he started
This is the anniversary of Woodstock. And it was Jimi Hendrix. It was Janis Joplin. It was the Grateful Dead. It was all these people who are so dear to our hearts, whether you were there or not. I mean, in 1969, when Woodstock happened, I was in San Francisco. I know a couple people who were there. And it was an event that was so extraordinary that so many people had gathered together. There was a lot of drugs. A lot of drugs. Believe you me, I knew what the 60s was like. And there was a joke in the 60s that, well, if you were there, you don't remember them. All right?
Right.
Millions of souls, all these people there gathered from Woodstock, no fighting, no alcohol, there was sharing, there was peace, they stopped charging money, they opened it up to everybody who was there, and it was an extraordinary event, the likes of which this world had never, ever seen before. And Robin Williams took this opportunity to come into us on the Woodstock anniversary and to say all these people were there on his side. On his side.
They welcomed him.
They welcomed him to be here with us, and so we could celebrate and be appreciative of that event 45 years ago that was bringing in a new era to humanity. An era of peace, brotherhood, and sisterhood that this world had not seen in millennium of warfare, fighting, competitiveness, and this was supposed to be an era where we were brothers and sisters with each other. I was there in the 60s, and to believe you me, I was as shocked by it as anybody else. Perhaps my parents were more shocked than I was because I was in law school when I dropped out and moved to Haight-Ashbury and fell into a world that I could not imagine and still today is beyond my mind's ability to grasp what happened. What happened to me in the 1960s was what happened to Betty in 1979 when she was told to take her group back to Camp Chesterfield, where she encountered phenomena, where she encountered trance circles, where she encountered spirits coming in and talking to her.
And some coming in and building themselves there.
Right in front of her.
Right in front of them.
Right in front of them. Betty told me a story. It's called Scotographs, all right? And this girl's very curious. And she heard that there was somebody at that camp. Was it Charlie Swan? All right.
Absolutely.
Charlie Swan is a legend. in certain circles.
Yes.
Like Jimi Hendrix is a legend in certain circles. All right? And in the circles of mediumship and phenomena, Charlie Swan is a legend.
Yeah.
All right? And Betty heard, and this is the time Charlie was sort of on his way out.
Yes.
Very old.
Yes.
He had stopped basically doing a lot of activity. All right? But Betty heard through the grapevine that Charlie Swan could do scotographs.
And materialization.
And materialization. All right? So here's Betty. All right? She's there. She's hearing about these things. She's been introduced to the extraordinary world, and she wants a crack at it before Charlie leaves. Tell what happened.
Well, they carried him on a mattress down to his seance room that he had not been in for quite a while.
You're hearing this story because she put in a request to Charlie Swan.
I asked him, I said, I know you're the only person that can do it. He said, I haven't for 5 years. I said, well, it's about time. So he did.
Now, I want to explain to you what scotographs are. This was something that Betty heard that only Charlie Swan had been doing. Other people could do it, but Charlie was there, all right? And she wanted to see it so much that she asked Charlie, and I guess he wanted to do it because he was not in good health. He hadn't done it for 5 years, and he agreed to do it. Now, scotographs, what you do is this.
Film.
A film.
Polaroid
You take a Polaroid film. Now, we have different chakras, all right? There are 7 energy centers, the adrenal glands. There's, the Hindus know all about this, and so do the hippies, all right?
And so do we.
And so do we. We know about the chakras. Now, what you do is this. You go in there, and you put the Polaroid on your stomach.
The film.
The film.
Just hold it.
Just hold it. Now, why? Because that's where your solar plexus is. That's where a lot of the energy comes for the phenomena. So this is what she did. She asked Charlie if he would do this, and you were there.
And he said yes, and while we are holding the Polaroid film, one of the great Indian chiefs.
Now, Betty, who else was in the room with you?
My class.
Okay, your class from Tucson.
My metaphysics class.
Folks, if you had been so lucky to be in Betty's metaphysics class from 1979 to 2005, you would have seen what she's going to tell us about.
And I will bring the film that was developed. We had developing film after the session. And we just put it in the thing and developed. And I have a wonderful picture of Geronimo. And he has come in and he says we are friends because I have his picture.
I have seen that Polaroid.
Scotograph.
It's a the scotograph. It's a scotograph. Now, you held that over your stomach. You had no idea what was coming onto it. What happened in the room when it was going on?
Crazy Horse, wonderful chief, great man. These men, great men, who were doing this phenomena for humanity to show us, to prove there is no death, okay? And so Crazy Horse speaks through Charlie Swan. Crazy Horse is what has made Charlie Swan the great phenomena medium that he was. Okay, he starts talking.
So he was Charlie Swan's teacher.
Crazy
George's
Horse,
teacher, okay.
was the facilitator.
Okay, gatekeeper.
Because he's in trance,
Yeah.
okay? So Crazy Horse says, now look over to the wall in front of that door, big door in front of the steps. It's closed, it's dark in there. This voice starts talking, and he says, I'm going to build myself while I'm talking. And so this figure, which came almost as tall as the room, larger than the door, starts building himself in the room. There are drummers, unseen drummers, in 4 corners of the room. And one of them came in and said, you know, in years before, we could come in, materialize, and come in and play drums that were materialized. But people got scared, and so now we can't, but we can talk. And they were talking from 4 corners of the room, while this great native Indian chief built himself in in the room. It was one of the most phenomenal sessions that I was ever in. So now Charlie comes in, talks to us, you know, so it was, yes, a picture. Just everybody's was different, and I'm grateful that mine was Geronimo.
This is the kind of phenomena that Betty Tatalajski has been seeing for weeks on end every summer since 1980. All right, this is the rabbit hole that Betty fell into. Now,
lovely rabbit hole.
I fell into it a long time later. All right, and I'm grateful that I had. It's like having the ultimate backstage pass. I think that's a great description of the world of spirituality. It's like having the backstage pass. I mean, in the 60s, the backstage pass is you got back there, all right, and saw what was going on and hung out on stage. And in the same way, spiritualism is, they know there's no death. I mean, there's death as we know it because you leave, the consciousness leaves, all right? Shakespeare said, we're here playing roles, all right? You come on, you leave, but you're still alive, all right? But to those here who are locked in the role, you don't believe it because you don't see anything else. This is the extraordinary thing about Betty Tatalajski and spirituality. It's not just her. This spirituality has been going on since the mid-19th century in the United States. Now, she told you about Crazy Horse. She told you about Geronimo. And I've done a lot of reading on this subject ever since I followed her into that rabbit hole, all right? And one of the questions that was raised, it was in England. Why do people have Indian guides? You know, because they'd go into trance and there'd be an Indian guide and you think, this Hollywood stuff, it's glamour. There's no Indian, you know. No, there's a reason for it. The reason is this. We're all here on this earth with different pieces of the puzzle, all right? The Aborigines in Australia have these dream states that they walked in. The Hindus with Sanskrit have ancient knowledge.
The
Indonesians have their world. The fire eaters, all right? The Jews with the Kabbalah. All right? Not necessarily the Kabbalah, that esoteric stuff. The Chinese with the I Ching and Lao Tzu with the Book of Tao. Channeled, pure knowledge. All right? Now, the Indians, the American Indians, they had a different hit on it. To them, the universe was alive. The physical universe was alive.
And it is.
And it is. The earth is alive. There's a spirit in everything. That's why the American Indians refer to what we call God, or Allah, or Jehovah, or Brahma, with the word spirit.
Spirit.
It's just pure spirit. Everything is spirit. We're spirit. The rock is spirit. There's a spirit in everything. And that's because of their connection through the ages, through millennia, that spirit is real. That's why when you go into these spiritualist churches, or where people have relationships and find out on the other side that the trance people, the people in trance, have spirit guides. All right? This is real. I didn't know about this before. I found out when I went to New Zealand on a trip in 2009, and we're leaving. Our friends of ours have a 50th wedding anniversary. They grabbed me, and there it is. But I want to get back to Robin Williams.
Yes, because of him, we got to I got to experience Woodstock.
Yes.
As he was calling them in.
All these
filling
names.
The room, okay?
With the spirits of people.
They all came
that
night.
All the icons of the 60s. There they were. And he says, we're here celebrating with you. And then Robin Williams goes, he starts coughing. And then he goes, sorry, my throat's a little tight. Now, for those of you who know, he hung himself. Robin Williams' last joke. I'm sure there's more coming.
Temple of Universality.
11 o'clock on Sunday.
Thank you, friends. Thank you, Darryl.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.